Hey there, everyone. Welcome to the Fantasy Fiends podcast. Yes, that's right. I actually showed up again. Wow. Fantastic, huh? That's what getting an actual physical planner does for someone who's known for being late. And I just found out the other day that I'm known for being late. So that was nice to hear. And he's like, was it me who said that? Well, I am here with my co-host, Aunt Eloquent, and we are honored to have Russell, oh Jesus, Nohelty.
Close enough. It's Nick Nolte. It's like it's pronounced like Nick Nolte, but spelled differently.
Nolte is how you say it?
Yes.
I'm sorry, man. I didn't
It's
mean
okay.
that.
It's about a 50-50. I'm actually more surprised when people get it right because it looks so weird.
Yeah. I have to ask, where is that from?
So it's Irish. What we guess is it's from Nohilly, which is the Knolls of Scotland, and then like most European names got butchered on Ellis Island when people came over.
Mine was butchered from Colyar, Colyar, and it's actually from a family of coal miners. So I'm from royalty.
Yeah.
No, I thought that was interesting, though. I'm mainly English and Irish myself. But today we have a fantastic episode for you guys. Today we are talking about a brand new topic that we've never discussed before. But of course, before that, let's get to know Russell better. Russell, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I am a fantasy writer. Obviously, I write mostly mythological fantasy and fantasy thrillers. The books that I have out, the series I'm known for, is just been rebranded as the Godsverse. So it's set across 13,000 years, 12 stories across 4 collections, which is a world where basically all gods are real, but they're dicks, and the humans who fight against their capricious rule.
I got you. Awesome, man. And you do a lot of cons, is what we were talking about before the podcast started.
I do. I didn't think it was a lot compared to other people that do the con scene, but I do somewhere between 20 and 30 appearances a year. Sometimes I do like writers conventions too, and I include that. But I probably 5 or 6 shows that I fly to, 4 or 5 that I drive to, and then the rest in Southern California.
Well, you're talking to someone who does 0, so.
Well, it's, I have a very weird way that I've run my business. I've been doing it for 5 years. I have made in that time about $3,000 total on Amazon and all other platforms except for Kickstarter and shows. And on Kickstarter, I've raised over $130,000, and then at shows, I make about $30,000 or $40,000 a year. So between those. When people say that there's only one way to make a living on, even if it's just doing KU versus online sales, most of the people that I know, especially ones that don't have a big backlog, they're making their living doing conventions and running Kickstarters. So I just did one for the Godsverse. Actually, the book got rebranded. I just did it today, thinking that maybe it would be nice for the people that heard this to actually see the books as they are. So I literally spent the morning going through and re-uploading everything to Amazon and getting all the pre-orders set. But we just did a $10,000 campaign to rebrand all of those books and put them out again.
Damn. So Kickstarter is notoriously difficult for a lot of people. I actually just read a book on it because I'm a marketing nerd. And apparently the reason why it's just people don't promote it correctly, and they don't have enough, like the tiers aren't valuable enough. So what are some tiers that you would suggest for authors or anyone who wants to start a Kickstarter?
Well, I don't think it's necessarily on the tiers. I think that so writers don't promote their books nearly enough. Like, it is horrifying to me that an author would put out a book and then 2 weeks later put out the next book in the series and then literally just stop promotion on the book before it. Or they will send one email for a book and then, like, that book, I've been selling the same books for since 2015, and they still sell as many copies now as they did in 2015 without new covers or anything at shows. And on Kickstarter, the thing that people, I think at least from my experience, I help hundreds of authors build their mailing lists and build their social media presences, and people fear getting people to look for more than 1 second at the thing that they put out. And Kickstarter is all about building an experience that is unique and fun and exciting and talking about it for weeks on end. Sometimes, as most Kickstarters go for a month. So you're talking about the same book, the same product for a month, and you have to keep it entertaining and fun and keep eyes on you. And I think a lot of authors, a lot of marketing people, a lot of artists in general just don't like to shine the spotlight of themselves. And the thing about Kickstarter is, especially in the first couple of days, you have to basically divert everybody's attention to look at you. And that is not the strength of most authors, especially because when you're doing advertising, it kind of goes in the background. I know Andy does a lot of advertising, so it doesn't require you to like be front and center and out there a lot. You just are kind of running ads, and it's slowly accumulating, and you don't have to be this big, loud center of attention that you really do with the Kickstarter. So that is the sort of mindset shift that I got from shows and being a salesperson for years that really helped me with Kickstarter from the beginning, which is how to make it feel like an event that can't be missed. And it ends up being the only time that my mailing list actually converts. Like when I do anything else, well, shows too, but when I do Amazon launches or anything else, I have a big mailing list and like literally nobody comes. But when I do a Kickstarter, because it's a time-based and because it's an event and because I like talk about it for a long time, my mailing list converts like bananas. And when I started doing the Amazon releases, when I started getting into the book game, everyone was telling me their mailing list didn't work. And I was like, that is bananas to me because my mailing list is like gold mine. And so I was like, my mailing list won't do that. And then last year I spent the whole year releasing books on Amazon and not doing a Kickstarter. Dead. No conversion. I did a Kickstarter in September. Huge conversion. Just did one in January for the same books that no one would do on Amazon, would buy on Amazon. Huge conversion for my mailing list. And it's all because the secret is you have to make it an event and be comfortable talking about that book for a month. And I am on a lot of author mailing lists, and I've literally never seen one person talk about a book for more than a week. Ever in a decade of that's not like in the Kickstarter comic community, which is what I'm used to comics. So in comics, we talk about it all the time, but for novels, it's usually, hey, my book's launched. Let me start my ads. And now I'm on to the next book.
You know what? Andy and I should do a Kickstarter for a series we write together. That'd be fantastic. That'd be fun. That would definitely be something I would talk to my list about all the time. So when you say we actually don't really discuss tactics, but I'm just curious now, is how many times do you email your list a month?
I do it once a day. Once a week, except during a Kickstarter campaign. I did a 10-day Kickstarter campaign and I sent 20 emails during that time.
Wow.
I did a 31-day Kickstarter campaign and I sent somewhere around the 40 emails during that time. So at least once a day during the campaign. But I'm constantly opening and closing events. So like there'll be the first week, there will be early bird incentives. So people that get in on the first few days get something. And then the second week, there'll be different incentives and like they'll all be time based. And the people that get in early get better deals. So I'm emailing them to not just be like, buy my book, but I'm saying, hey, here are your early bird incentives. Oh, we just passed this goal. Oh, we just passed this other goal. Oh, the early bird's closing. Oh, here's the next set of stuff that's opening now. And then sometimes you'd be like, here's why I really love this one book in this package, or here's how I love this one thing. Or if we hit this number, if we hit this goal, I'm gonna open this other thing. And so with the last book we just did, the people that got in the first day got $50 of extra ebooks. They got, I think, 10 or 15 extra books included in their pledge. So I want them to get as much stuff as possible. So I email them a lot, but usually I email them once a week.
Awesome, man. Well, so we actually do this thing where we have something cool that's happened to us. We talk about something cool that's happened to us within the past 2 weeks. Something pretty, Andy, what would you say? Something
cool.
Yeah,
cool is the word you're looking for, Stevie.
Yeah, well, I'm moving into a new apartment. That's my cool thing for the week.
Ooh.
Yes, brand new apartment. It's a lot bigger than this one. It's got a fireplace, which I'm excited about. I don't know why I like that damn fireplace so much. So, and it's right by a lake, which is really cool.
Nice.
So, like, so close that they actually rent out fishing poles.
What? That's nice.
Kayaks and stuff. It's a really cool feature. And they're rebuilding a deck right there. It's our private lake. It's really cool.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, man. For something like this in Los Angeles, Russell, because I lived in LA for a long time, I feel like it would have been an easy $3,000 a month.
Yeah. Yeah, so, I have a 1,200 square foot house, and it cost me $2,000 a month. So wow. You can extrapolate that out to my father bought a 7-acre property, literally brand new, top of the line in Ithaca for the same price.
Jeez, man. Where are you in LA?
Long Beach.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's where Sublime started.
Yeah, I go right by. Well, they claim it's Snoop Dogg's high school, but not. But then other people say it's not Snoop Dogg's high school. So, and I'm too lazy to look it up.
Just roll down your windows and smell the air. That'll tell you.
Hey, I've lived here since 2008, and then we moved into Long Beach in 2012. We lived in Marina Del Rey before then.
I like Marina Del Rey.
Marina Del Rey is right on the ocean on the west side by Santa Monica.
Yeah, I'm from Glendale. So
okay, cool.
Do you know the Americana in Glendale?
No.
Oh, okay, that's where the apartment is. But anyway, so is there something cool that has happened to you within the past 2 weeks, month, whatever?
Well, we just talked about it. I literally just ended this Kickstarter last Thursday, so we kind of did it. The really cool. So this series was in 4 separate series before last year, before this Kickstarter, and I wanted to. I was having a lot of problems transitioning someone from one series to the next. So what I wanted to do was make it feel more cohesive. So I rebranded the whole thing as the God's Verse. Each book is 3 books in one that takes place for one of the heroes in one of the time periods in the God's Verse. So I'm hoping that now it's more consistent. And people are more likely to move from one to the other because the covers all feel the same, even though, and the writing was always the same, felt the same kind of like fantasy thriller tone, but now they actually look cohesive. And so I am super excited. Let's see, do I have one? I have one copy of one of the books. So like this is the main, the first book in the series, rebranded from the other one, just looked not as good.
Awesome, man.
Very cool.
That's good to hear, Andy. It's been a while since we talked to you.
Yeah, so I think probably the coolest thing that's happened to me is that tomorrow, on the 31st of January, it will be a whole month that I've gone to the gym 6 days a week for the first time since ever, basically. Like it's my I wanted to do a 60-day challenge of 2 months of going to the gym for 6 days a week, and then once I hit that, scale back to 4 or 5 days. But it's been great because obviously I'm getting in shape, getting healthy, but then I've also been able to sort of binge listen to audiobooks. I've basically listened to 3 audiobooks since the beginning of the month because I'm spending so much time at the gym now. So it's been really enjoyable.
Do you say awesome. That's part of your work is listening to books?
No, not really. It's just
Oh,
such an important part of my workout.
Okay.
Because when you're listening to a book, you forget that you've been rowing for 20 minutes, or you've been running for 40 minutes, or how tired you are. So like it makes it so much more enjoyable. At least for me. Some people, they don't understand, without that sort of pumping music to get them in the mood. For me, it's a great book.
I bet you do row for 20 minutes.
Not yet. I'm working up there.
Jesus Christ, dude, you're gonna have like back muscles like a actual bat.
I'm working on it. It was really cool. So I went snowboarding on Saturday. Took such a pounding from the snow, like super icy. But some of the slopes I was like writing down, and the book I've got going in my ear, and it's like the epic clash between the good guys and the bad guys and the fight scenes. And so you feel like such a badass as you're snowboarding with these climaxes in your ears. It was like, oh yeah.
That's bull crap, dude. You just say it so casually too. Oh, I went snowboarding this weekend. I worked this weekend. And no, I'm just kidding. That's cool though. It sounds like you're getting better at snowboarding.
Yeah. I mean, so it was really icy this last week because it was like it had warmed up until Thursday, and then Thursday night was a cold snap. So by Saturday when we went, it was like a top coat of ice that was just pretty brutal, but it was still a lot of fun, and I found that I fell a lot less than I used to, which is kind of how I define my skill these days. But I think by the end of the season I'll be writing maybe a couple of blues here and there, getting a little bit better.
Did I tell you my dream about you?
You told me one of your dreams about me, Stevie.
Did I say it through email or on the podcast? And Russell's like, what the hell's going on? Well, it's real quick. I had a dream that we went snowboarding together, and I like jumped into your arms, and you like were taller than the trees. It got weird. And then for some reason you became a kangaroo, and I got in like this marsupial bag with you. It was weird.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, it was. It was warm.
What are you manifesting, Stevie? What is this that you're manifesting?
You should be asking, what am I smoking?
There's that.
So today we have an interesting topic for you guys, and that is God versus humans. Who controls who? This is how did we come up with this topic, Russell? I'm guessing this was your doing.
Well, so that's the sort of crux of the gods verse is, do you have agency over capricious gods or your destiny? The four main characters in the gods verse, they at least start as human and or human powered fairies, and they all have to sort of fight against the fates that the gods gave them. I'm not a huge fan of writing gods. I mean, I love writing gods, but I don't like them to be the main characters because I have a lot of problems with religion, and this is sort of my catharsis. So the gods verse as a whole is about basically the crux is that when a habitable world is formed, all gods exist. All gods come, and they all try and make it sustainable. And then when it's sustainable, they all leave, leaving one god in charge. And the god we get stuck with is Bacchus, who's a vain drunk. He's supposed to keep worship of the old gods. He turns everything into monotheism, and he makes up things like that he's all powerful and all knowing and all good, which is like ridiculous. Like, look at everything around. Like, I find it ridiculous that like someone could be all three of those things. Like, I could maybe say two of them. Like, okay, you're all powerful, all knowing, but not all good. You're all good, you're all knowing, but you're not all powerful. You're all powerful, all good, but not all knowing. Like, I can swear any of those two, but I have a problem with the three. So it starts on Earth. The first book in the Death Followed Behind Us book is set in the apocalypse. About Katrina gets caught up in a battle between heaven and hell. The second book, Katrina sets out to save Bacchus, who gets arrested for his part in the apocalypse. And the third book, she sets out to kill to fight Cronus. And it's all about this one woman who's just a human who takes agency against this like kind of crappy deck of cards that the gods have put on her. And it's not because they particularly care. They just are awful.
It reminds me kind of like God of War.
Yes, kind of, except
She doesn't
kind of in that, but it is in that vein. It's quite a lot less bloody than that book, but in the same vein. Like, and the gods take a very specific interest in Kratos, whereas it's not that the gods take an interest in Katrina. Okay. She just gets fed up with the fact that like she's stuck living in the apocalypse, and that is the catalyst for like basically the whole rest of the universe.
Didn't it used to be called Katrina Hates the Apocalypse or something?
Yeah, the first book used to be called Katrina Hates the Apocalypse, and the first compendium used to be called Katrina Hates Everything. It's based on my graphic novel, Katrina Hates Dead Shit. And so that sort of became but it didn't really resonate as much with readers as it did with comic book people. So that's where the books are called And Death Followed Behind Her, and Doom Followed Behind Her, and Hell Followed Behind Her, and Ruin Followed Behind Her. And then the first book I pulled out into its own thing called And Demons Followed Behind Her, which is rebranded from Katrina Hates the Apocalypse.
Very cool.
Also, so I just have to ask, you don't have to answer, but do you have polytheistic views, or are these just completely fictional and for fun?
I believe that the only gods that could possibly exist are capricious and mercurial in nature. I still wear, as a lapsed Catholic, my Catholic cross. It's a Christian cross because I don't particularly like the murdery crucifix. But I have a lot of. I am agnostic, not atheistic. I don't know what is out there. I sure think that it would be. I sure think that it would be ridiculous for like one God creature to make all of this and then claim that it's all everything that happens is like for the best and like it's all like for the good and like there's a reason for everything. I respond to polytheism and across anything from Lovecraft to Norse to Celtic, because all the gods there don't care. Like they just don't. Or sometimes they care when it fits their own ends. And it makes so much sense when you look at the world that like the person who made it doesn't know what he's doing. They just like were out there like children trying to like make Tinker Toys or like G.I. Joes, and like this is what came. And I'm perfectly capable to accept that like there are gods and forces beyond my control. I think I'm mostly a Taoist if I had to like put myself in one religion. But if there is one God and he is and he made this and he is actually all good, all powerful, all knowing, like I'm going to have some serious questions in there.
I've read the I don't know if you'd call it a scripture, but the Taoist I don't even know what you'd call it, but it's so, in my opinion, difficult to get through and to like the Bible, you can read it and that's still pretty difficult to kind of understand the meaning, but Taoism, I feel it's some deep stuff. Each line you have to pay attention. Do you know what
but it's so simple. So when it comes down to it, I mean, I'm not a Taoist scholar, but the thing that I respond to is that there's a force in the universe that flows through everything, and the more you turn into it and sort of surrender to it, the easier things get, and the more you fight against it, and the more you move to against it, then the harder things get. Now, obviously, Katrina and the characters in my universe don't subscribe to that, but like things get very, very hard for them. Things are very hard for them in all of my books across everything. So, to go back to your question, I think that there is something out there, because it's a real bleak existence without that.
Yeah.
But I really like The Good Place, where it's like every religion got it about 5% right, and I'm willing to say that it's some amalgam that like thousands of people throughout history have glimpsed like 1% of what the truth is, but it's unknowable in that sort of green blue morality what is going on.
You know, my favorite version of it, personally, obviously, that's all I have to go on, is from the Chronicles of Narnia, where in the last battle, there's the Narnians and then there's the enemy realm. I can't remember what they were called. And so there's this big battle, everybody dies essentially, and they go to this sort of afterlife-y kind of place. And so all the Narnians are going off to heaven, you know, they're all the good ones. And then there's the enemy soldier, he's sitting there under a tree crying, and he's like, you know, Aslan, the good god, goes to him and says, "Why are you crying?" And he says, "Well, because all my life I've served this evil god Tash, and now I can't get into this version of heaven because of that." And Aslan tells him, "Oh no, don't worry about it. All the good stuff that you did goes to my credit, regardless of whether you said it under my name or Tash's, and all the bad that other people did goes on Tash's account, regardless of what name they did it on." And that for me was like it was an important turning point in my belief system or my religious journey, because it doesn't matter who I you know, what name I say, as much as what I do. And now a lot of Christian religions will go against the, you know, it's not about works, salvation by faith rather than by works, and that's a whole other ball of wax. But for me, it's just more like making sure that my role in life is to make a positive impact, or to leave more positive behind than negative, and ultimately that is what will assure, you know, whatever the real version of the good place is, doing those, you know, those positive actions, all the good stuff. That's what's more important than whether, you know, you say a made up name or a real name.
Yeah, I'm rereading a book that I loved when I was a kid called Living Buddha, Living Christ by Thich Nhat Hanh. And he talks about like the similarities across Buddhism and Christianity, but across all religions, there's so many similarities about like the doing good and a lot of the acts of faith, and a lot of these things are kind of similar. So you know, and a lot of the names that we call God are just like the name that whatever like Allah is just God in Arabic. So I also don't think that it's necessarily like that there's one truth out there anyway. Like, it's possible that like there is a way that runs through everyone, and there are capricious gods, and you can get to Valhalla, and like there is a Mount Olympus, and there is an underworld. Like, the universe is so enormous that there's room for it for multiple end games to be true. Yeah. Or all end games to be true. Like, there could be really weird Lovecraftian gods out there, as well as Zeus and all of the other gods that we know about. Or
sort of like how cops will tell you, you know, you have 5 people witnessing the exact same event, you get 5 very different stories of that account.
And you can see that in the New Testament. Like, the New Testament is basically 4 people recounting the same event, and from 4 different viewpoints, and like they contradict each other quite a bit if you read them all in order.
One person focuses on one aspect and the other person focuses on another aspect. You know, you all get these massive pictures of who Jesus is, but only because you've put all 4 books together. If you put, you know, the Greek mythology next to Norse mythology, next to Buddhism, next to all of these things, and you somehow look for the common vein that flows through them all, that might be
the gods
more accurate, or more accurate idea of what heaven, hell, the underworld, afterlife, whatever it is. If you put them all together, that might be a more accurate depiction. Or it's sort of like, you know, 1,000 people, like you said, 1,000 people saw a different version of the exact same thing, or because their angle changed when they looked at it. You know, the paradise, afterlife, underworld kind of thing. We all get different stories, but really it all kind of comes down to the same thing.
Right, exactly.
That's interesting. So, oh shit, I totally forgot what I was about to say. You know, in the Chronicles of Narnia, is there a Satan?
There is not a Satan. There is the sort of an evil force that's the White Witch. She's consistent. I don't know when she or like her effects on the world leave, but then there's Tash, who's sort of the god of the enemy army, and he is a sort of an evil god. That's the closest thing. But that guy really only shows up in the last one.
I got you. Russell, you talked about destiny. Is that a reoccurring theme in the book? Whether or not
I don't think that I ever flat out just talk about destiny. I have a book where I talk about karma and destiny, called Worst Thing in the Universe, which hasn't come out yet. It'll come out later this year. The idea is more that you have onus and agency of what happens to you. I think of all the books, what is true is the gods or the monsters in the universe throw heaps of bad stuff on these people for no reason than they happen to just be unlucky, and they find a way to to make a way in the world where they have an impact. Yeah, and I was talking about this with Andy a couple of days ago. I mean, I think that if I had to put it down to the thing that like resonates with my work about something, it's that like even against the will of the gods or the capriciousness of the gods, the main characters in the books that I write, at least in the gods verse, have agency to change themselves. And in a world where, you know, it's becoming less and less optimistic as every day, I think that a little amount of hope, even though they go through a lot, like they go through just so much. Like I am so brutal to these characters throughout the course of these books, but they still never stop. And while they may not get everything they want, they do get what they need in the end.
Yeah, and I like that approach where the humans have agency. It's kind of what made me think of this, of the title, you know, who controls who, because you know there's the school of thought that religion was only created as a way for humans to quantify the unquantifiable, like lightning. What the hell is lightning? You know, caveman just stepping out of his cave, no idea what lightning is. All of a sudden it becomes this divine force. Or, you know, what's to explain why the lion just snatched my newborn child out of its crib on the savannah? You know, the jungle gods, you know, whatever it is, there is this belief that religions came up because people wanted to understand something that was fundamentally ununderstandable, which is the chaos of the world. And so taking it out of the hands of these divine beings who may or may not exist and who, you know, may or may not care for you, love you, want your best interests at heart, want to do their own thing, whatever it is, taking it out of their hands and putting it on you, making it about your actions, your decisions, your choices. Don't tell me that it's, you know, it's the will of some divine being that, you know, there's a plan and everything happens for good. No. Someone made a choice. This is the consequence of their action, which means when it's my turn to make a choice, I need to think and say, okay, someone else made this choice. That was the consequence. I'm going to make a better choice so that I have a better consequence. And
absolutely,
it takes it away from this nebulous thing of, you know, all things work together for good, and makes it make the right choices. Do what's right.
Yeah. So there's interesting play on what is right and like what like obsession in the books, but especially in the first book, but especially in the book that most people have read, if they've read my work, is the Katrina Hates Dead shit, which is the Demons Follow Behind Her. And there is a point about halfway through where a lot of bad stuff has happened to Katrina and her friend Connie, and it's sort of been happening to them. Like they make a decision that like this is not okay, that like they've finally been fed up and like they are going to hell to confront the devil and make him end the bullshit that they've been dealing with for the last 2 years. And after 2 years of all of this stuff happening, like suddenly like they reach a point where they no longer are willing to put up with the world that they are cast to. And they are going to take, even though it's the dumbest idea that like you can, I mean, the odds against them are like, they're going to just walk into hell, through hell into the devil's castle and like bitch slap him? Is that like what that's their basically their plan is so ludicrous, but because they're so committed to it, and because so much bad stuff has happened to them, they're unwilling to be deterred from it, even when they get embroiled in a battle of heaven and hell, and even when things keep going wrong, and even when like all hope seems lost. The truth is that like all hope was lost, and this little glimmer of them being able to like maybe kill the devil or fight the devil is the only thing giving them hope now. And so throughout the first book is quite a bit is kind of hopeless, but then they get that hope when they decide to take the world into their destiny into their own hands. And even though I don't actually mention destiny like by name, or no one comes in and like magically is like, your destiny is this. That is what's happening in that book. And but all three Katrina books kind of have that same idea of like, well, screw this. Like, this is not okay. Like, I need to speak to the manager.
She's a Karen.
A Karen. That's great. I'm glad I'm not the only one who knows what that means.
Oh, that's my wife's name. She loves that one.
Oh, Jesus. Dang it. Now I look like a jerk.
It's okay. I give her stuff about it all the time.
Do you?
Does she have the haircut?
She does kind of have the haircut without the streaks of blonde.
Okay. Yeah, that would be a step too far.
Yeah.
Well, do you guys want to jump into the book?
Let's do it.
Russell, is there any like backstory we need to know before we start chapter 1?
I think I explained most of the backstory in chapter 1. It's been 2 years since the apocalypse started. Actually, you're going to read the prologue too? Because the prologue explains it all.
You just sent chapter 1.
Yeah.
No.
That's fine.
Maybe I'll read the prologue, because that prologue will explain everything to you.
All right, do it. Oh, wait. But first, how many characters are there in chapter 1?
Katie, Barry and Katie, I think, are the only, Katrina are the only 2 characters, I'm pretty sure.
I got a Ronald here.
Oh, there's a Ronald too. Sorry, there's a phone call from Ronald.
All right. Well, do you want to be the narrator?
Sure.
All right, Stevie, do you want to be Katrina / Katie?
Yep, I'll be them.
And I'll do the rest of the voices.
Sure.
All right. Prologue. 2 years ago, the world went through the end of times, the apocalypse, or whatever you religious types call it. God beamed all the good boys and girls up to some giant orgy in the sky and left the rest of us asking one question: why not me? A rift opened in the desert. Hellspawn poured out onto Earth. They ravaged humanity, ripped us apart for their own pleasure, torturing us in the most grotesquely creative ways possible. They looted our towns, raped our bodies, and slaughtered us at will. It was bedlam, hell on Earth, and there was nothing we could do to stop it. Then, one day, the monsters got bored and opted for a quiet life in the suburbs. They squatted in the homes of the people they once brutally murdered. They were neither pleasant nor polite neighbors. They threw raucous parties late into the night and played their guitars too loud. They shot off fireworks in the dead of night. They lived like frat boys. We lived in constant fear and in a state of perpetual loneliness, expecting to die and scared to live. We tried to get along any way we could, even after we'd lost everything. Chapter 1.
Stevie.
Does that mean?
Yeah.
Stay out of here, man.
The metal door of my apartment shook and shuddered over and over as a zombie slammed against it. Wooden doors broke too easily. They splintered and sheared during even a light zombie attack. Metal doors lasted forever if you could find a few suckers willing to lug it up a flight of stairs for you. The door slammed again. The zombie on the other side wouldn't give up. I had to give that to him.
I told you I'm not letting you in, so piss off.
Zombies were a nuisance more than anything. Their spongy flesh barely held together against your fist. They were only intimidating as a horde, and there hadn't been a zombie horde for months. At most, you got a few zombies huddled in a group. As far as monsters went, zombies ranked at the bottom of the apocalyptic monster scale. There were all sorts of demons around since the rapture, not to mention ghosts and minotaurs and 3-headed dogs and 7-headed hydras too. It's a complete mess. It's what you deal with during a full-blown apocalypse. the kind the Bible warned us about for all those wasted millennia. Also, most zombies talked, and not just the we eat brains either. They were lucid, just like anybody else on the planet. Well, some of them anyway. If they rose from the grave before their brains rotted, they could speak. Otherwise, they were shuffling, stupid zombies like in old horror movies. But that's just science. I slammed my weight against the banging door.
Go away.
I'm not going anywhere, Katrina.
The zombie shouted back.
I have squatters' rights.
Go away.
This particular zombie might or might not be, but definitely was my old roommate. He's a dick. Not because he's a zombie either. That just doesn't help the situation. No, he's a dick because he hasn't paid rent in 6 months. I was making headway getting the door actually closed and locked when my phone rang. Yes, there was still cell service 2 years into the apocalypse. No, I didn't know why it worked, but you don't have to be a genius to figure out that the corporate shills who ran the cell companies weren't churchgoers. Otherwise, they would have been raptured. Weird how that caveat worked. Where you could escape damnation just by going to church. A lot of rapists went to church, and a lot of good people didn't. Found all sorts of good men and women God left behind after the apocalypse began. Men and women who did the Lord's work, even if they didn't go to church or praise his name. God was a vindictive bastard. The devil was worse, though, for unleashing hell upon us. I flipped open my phone.
What do you want, Ronald?
Ronald was my boss at the only job I could find after the apocalypse. Yes, there were still jobs. We were not savages. People got to make a living. They got to eat. We're not marauders. Well, some of us were marauders, but not most of us.
Katie!
Ronald shouted into the phone.
Don't call me that.
I screamed. I hated when people called me Katie. His shrill voice pounded against my eardrum.
It's loud over there. Someone tapping that ass or something?
The door slammed again. I braced against it with all my weight.
You think I would pick up the phone if I was getting nailed, Ronald?
I'd like to think so. I mean, I imagine it often enough, Katie.
Imagine me ramming my fist through your skull if you ever call me Katie again.
The zombie slammed against the door again. I pressed my ass against it to prevent it from coming in.
Look, Katie, you got to come in.
Screw you, man. I've worked for the last 3 weeks straight. This is my day off.
I don't know what to tell you. Alex and Lisa both caught the plague. They can't come in since they're dying.
Can't you find somebody else?
Who is there, man? I mean, I guess I could pull a couple of zomboids off the street. They're always good for a shift.
No, don't do that. I'll come in, all right? Just do not hire any zomboids.
I knew you would.
I hate you.
The door slammed again. I'd had enough. I ripped it open and glared at the giant zombie smiling back at me.
Screw off, Barry. I kicked you out 2 weeks ago.
He scratched his red hair. Flecks of skin fell to the ground.
I know, Katrina, but I just found a copy of Donald and Math Magic Land. I want to watch it, so I'm going to need my TV.
I haven't seen a dime from you in 6 months. Consider the TV my payment.
All right. That's fair. But I'm just going to keep coming back for it, right? I mean, it's not like there's a whole lot of functional TVs left in town, aside from the Black Zone, and I ain't crazy enough to go there. I've been salvaging around and looking for one. So, you could keep it, and then you'll have to keep seeing me, or else you can let me take it and I'll be out of your hair forever.
I sighed. His zombie logic was sound.
Take the TV and you're out of my life forever. Agreed?
Scout's honor. Now, let me in. I'm freezing my nerps off.
I stepped aside and let Barry into the apartment.
Fine. Grab it and go. I'm late anyway, and I got a shower to get the stench of you off me.
Fair enough. Hey, can I walk with you? It's not safe out there.
I grumbled to myself on the way to the bathroom.
Fine. Just wait for me out here.
Thanks, Katie.
Don't call me that.
Keep going?
Yeah.
Yeah,
all right.
Good.
To the next bullet point.
I winced as the cold water hit my shoulder. I haven't had hot water in a year, but my body never acclimated to the moment cold water first hit my naked body. Hot water was a luxury, and we didn't get luxuries anymore. Some businesses still had access to hot water, but only if it was critical to their operation, like water treatment plants. There wasn't much we could hold on to these days, but clean water was one of them. It's one of the few things that kept us human, one of the few things that kept us going even on the worst days. On special occasions, I gathered kindling and boiled water the old-fashioned way, but this wasn't a special occasion. This was just a run-of-the-mill Thursday. I rubbed the remnants of the last bar of soap over my aching shoulders. Trucks didn't deliver soap anymore. Luckily, there was plenty of human fat to turn into soap, and there was always an industrious person willing to harvest enough to make more. But it took time. Another batch wasn't due for a couple days. Scars covered every inch of my body, save for my face. I wore long jackets and pants to cover them up, but as the soap rode against my skin, it told the story of every battle I ever fought in Braille. From the first days of the apocalypse through last night, where I beat back 7 zombies with a hatchet. Every scar was a reminder that nowhere was safe.
Are you almost done in there?
Barry shouted at me.
No.
I screamed back.
Go away.
The less civilized zombies still terrorized the countryside. The more docile ones lived in apartments and kept to themselves. The most enterprising demons hired less industrious monsters to flood the streets with terror, and zombies were their weapon of choice. You could go without a zombie attack for days, forget that life was a constant struggle, then face 4 attacks in an evening. Once the zombies tired us out, the demons would come in and finish the job. Anybody still alive could fend off a zombie attack on their best day, but it's harder to have your wits about you after you've been up for 100 hours straight. That's where people got slaughtered nowadays. Everybody left was covered in scars, mentally and physically. We could all handle ourselves, but sometimes you just lost your faculties. Other times, you lost the will to live. Everybody lost the will sometimes. Hopefully, you got it back before you did anything stupid, because there's a mighty crappy price to pay for death. Hell. If I died, I went to hell. There were no ifs, ands, or buts about it. God already beamed the good boys and girls up to some giant orgy in the sky, and I wasn't one of them, which meant there was only one way out. Hell on earth was bad enough, but hell in hell was an unbearable thought. I ran the soap over a deep scar across my thigh, received in the first days of the apocalypse when Barry was still human. Back then, and even before the apocalypse, we were roommates. We met through his sister Connie and hit it off well enough. After high school, neither of us wanted to go to college. We just wanted to chill out and smoke weed all day. Barry sold enough dope on the side to make his half of the rent. I worked for mine. Once the apocalypse hit, the world erupted into endless flames. If you've ever seen the picture of a forest fire engulfing Los Angeles, with the Holly Hobby homes in the foreground and the blaze burning inches from it, you know what it looked like. The entire city of Overbrook caught flame at the same time. Our neighbors ran screaming through the streets. Great demons with sword and scythe indiscriminately hacked down everybody in their path. That's where I got the scar. I turned the corner and came face to face with a big demon, like Andre the Giant on steroids. It swung its scythe at me and sliced through my thigh. I bled out on the street, losing consciousness. Barry found me. If he hadn't dragged me to a hospital, let's just say they took care of me there. Overbrook Hospital did good work until they were overrun with demons. Like the big box stores and malls, they were easy targets for marauders and demons. There weren't hospitals anymore, but clinics existed sporadically around the city. Everything in Overbrook existed haphazardly. There's a doctor over here, a laundry over there, and a restaurant wherever there's room. People found little pockets of safety in the nightmare and hunkered down.
Keep going. Finish the next bit.
I dressed the same every day. I didn't have the energy to agonize over my closet. I needed the brain power to stay alert, long pants to cover my scars, and a white shirt and leather jacket. Rocked workout gloves too, because they helped me grip poles and other weapons. They are the top 5 must-have items for any apocalypse. I've been saved from so many blisters with those gloves. The last thing you want is an open wound when the monsters come out of the woodwork and attack. I put together my look to be part utilitarian, part badass. Be lying if I say that part of my shtick was to look the part. That wasn't to look the part. People left you alone if you walked with a snarl, combat boots, and workout gloves. Even after 2 years, there were lots of people who ran away from a fight unless it was necessary, even though we could all handle ourselves. You don't get this far without having some serious survival skills. I didn't much work out anymore, but I didn't need to either. Just living was enough of a workout. Back before the apocalypse, Connie and I did Krav Maga to protect ourselves from her horrible father. It came in handy after the apocalypse when I had to break more than noses. Ironically, I needed those skills less now than I did at the beginning. The monsters were softer now than when the apocalypse first started. A function of living on Earth, I suppose. They got a little doughy around the midsection, decided playing video games was better than ripping people apart. Those that enjoyed the heat and violence of hell returned to the brimstone to torture billions of new victims. The runty ones remained. They didn't have the same killer instinct. Most of them just wanted to be left alone. Finally dressed, I walked out of the bathroom and saw Barry on the couch, watching the TV, man spreading like he owned the place with his hand down his pants. Men never change.
Let's go.
I shouted to him.
Quit digging around.
I just had this image of like The Office, but in this world.
Yeah.
Just sort of like your run of the mill, daily slice of life comedy, but in the middle of an apocalypse with half of the people are zombies.
I love it. I would watch that show.
You should write that show, Russell.
You could do that for sure. It was funnier than I thought it was going to be.
Thank you.
Yeah, I liked it. It definitely had me chuckling.
I appreciate that. It was, I tried to subvert the comedy underneath all of the action adventure.
Oh, absolutely. And that's what makes it so amazing or so entertaining is that, like you see it in the Avengers where there's all these, epic battles, but the jokes are really what make it so much fun. And so when you strike that right balance between the epic and then the humor, it's awesome.
Well, and it's so mythological fantasy is so absurd. Because like by definition, fantasy is kind of absurd. All fantasy is kind of absurd because like it's humans against like the stuff that we imagine, like all the stuff that we imagine. Even science fiction is not really absurd because it's sort of science that we know taken to its logical extreme. But fantasy has that sort of naturally absurdist quality to it, especially when it's humans versus gods. It's just like a rife moment for comedy. And the original thing was a commentary on Left Behind, but it just became a commentary on like all of like.
I totally got that. The rapture and that whole thing. I was like, man, this is like Left Behind with someone who was left behind. It was super snarky.
Yeah. Well, and I definitely wanted to make a main character who didn't feel like who felt like they belonged in the world. Like there was a reason why she survived because like she's alive still. Like it's 2 years after the minute that the book starts, you're like, oh, well, it's been 2 years since the apocalypse and this person survived. Like clearly the stuff that she's going to face later, she would be prepared for by simple fact of like, she had to survive for 2 years and almost nobody else did.
Yeah. Now is the whole rapture apocalypse thing sort of a thing like why some people are gone, why some people aren't, or is it just kind of like people who went to church are gone and leave it at that?
Yeah, pretty much. The good went up and the rest of them remained. You do sort of get people having an idea of what happened, but I try not to. It's really a fantasy thriller. I don't know if I've heard that might be a category. I'm not quite sure, but I tried to make the thriller, like tried to make it feel like a thriller and not like with the religious stuff and the mythology sporadically thrown in.
Yeah.
So she gets caught up in a battle between heaven and hell, and with that and Katrina's inherent snarkiness, you do get, and her inherent questioning, you do get her basically asking all of the monsters that she comes across, like, what the hell? And everybody has sort of a different explanation for why the apocalypse happened. And she starts to, as you move through the world, you start learning, humans and then mythological creatures, and all these people have their own sort of reason for why the apocalypse started. And it's not until you reach the end and you sort of put it all together that you sort of can get the real thing. So I did want that to be the driving force of the piece, but it's definitely the undercurrent of like, who is really responsible for the apocalypse happening? Is it humanity? Is it the devil? Is it God? Is it some other mythical force?
What hit me hard was when you said, when you die, you go to hell. I'm like, that sucks. Like, there's no redemption.
Yeah, there's no...
That we know of, I guess.
Well, there's no... You don't really... She is making a lot of definitive statements. She certainly makes a lot of definitive statements in this book for a human who doesn't actually have any real idea except... And that's sort of a current for all of my work. The people make very definitive statements about things that they... just because they lived it. and then their statements almost all get pulled apart when they learn more information in the past, especially when they move on. So like, it's a road movie. It's a road book. So they start in outside of Portland and they get to Reno, and they like get in the like heaven and hell and like deserts and stuff. And they meet all these people at the different spots along the way. And they all on their drive to the Hell Rift, they all have different ideas as to what will stop the apocalypse and what won't stop the apocalypse and what caused the apocalypse. Meanwhile, Katrina and Connie really don't care about the reason why. Like, they just want to bitch slap the devil and have somebody to blame. And so while there is the undercurrent of that, the real thing, which is what makes the Godsverse like so fun to write. I haven't written it since I'm just starting to, because of the Kickstarter, we funded production on the 5th book.
Dang.
So it went from being very long until I would ever write a 5th book to us actually funding it and me putting it in my schedule next. So I've been writing this book series called the Obsidian Spindle Saga, where I was writing about 700 words an hour, which might sound like a lot, but it's actually much less than what I normally write. With the Godsverse, I just started it on Monday, and I'm writing about 1,500 words an hour because like it's just so like it's not it's the thriller aspect, just how it moves forward and like the pace of how fast everything goes. And the almost single-minded devotion that each of the characters has to like pursuing the main goal mean that where my other books, I have to think a lot. There's a lot of like, how does this interplay? How is this character really going to feel? The main characters of the Godsverse, they just like, they're steamrollers. They just are like, we're doing this, and I don't care about the consequences. We're like, this is the next, it's like bullet point. What do I have to do next? Well, a couple of them think a couple of moves ahead. So much happens to them that like, I almost condense it. So there's only one possible path, even for someone who wants to think. Like, you know, they want to sit in a room and think, but then a monster comes out and they like can't think. It like all drives it forward. So they're incredibly fast books, and they're incredibly fast books to write. And I didn't know that about the Godsverse because I haven't written it really since 2018. Wow. I've been writing other stuff all of 2019. Five different things. So this is my first foray back into it. And I was worried because the Godsverse is about 90,000 words and my normal work is about 60,000 words. So I was worried it would like wreck my schedule of writing for the year, but I'm writing them about 50% faster than the other books I was reading. So it feels, I've never had the experience of like suddenly a book series just like was so fast to write because of just how like energetic all of the characters are and how clearly they see the world. A lot of my other work is very nuanced. It's, you know, there's the characters don't necessarily know what they're supposed to do next, or some of them don't. At least some of them have more clearly defined goals, but they're quite a bit more passive or thinkers. Whereas with this series, because of it's just so thrillery, like the characters just have such a sense of purpose that it just makes it a blast to write and hopefully a blast to read as well.
Very cool. Some people are asking if it's on audiobook.
It's not on audiobook yet. We just in a year, for the last year, I've been trying to get back to break even on the print books. Oh. And we just did that about a week ago. So like I'm exploring audiobooks. It's something that I really want to do, but I haven't found the right narrator yet. It's really trying to be judicious with finding somebody who can carry the whole series, because of the speed of how I want it read. I want it to be read faster than most audio books are, but not a ton faster, but because of the speed of the characters, I'm having trouble finding somebody that can talk fast enough for me to get the audiobook done. And then, it's all about budget and stuff. It's funny because 2 weeks ago, I never would even thought about doing audiobooks, but now it's something I've actually engaged a couple of people on to do some samples for me in the past month. So hopefully by 2021, I might have a different answer for you.
That would be a fun listen. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. So where can people find you? You're all over the place, right?
Yeah, russellnohelty.com. You can pick up a couple of free stories at russellnohelty.com/mail. You can find me on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, or you can drop me an email, russell@wannabepress.com. Find our Kickstarter. Find me on Kickstarter. But the best way is honestly, if you go to russellnohelty.com, you get free books for signing up for my mailing list, and then I can redirect you to all of the other places. I also am on BookBub, obviously. And the God's Verse starts at and Demons Follow Behind Her. I've made sure that it was updated today with the brand new interiors that I just finished on Monday. And it's 99 cents for that one book. It's the only one that you get a little sample of for less than the 3-book price.
Awesome, Russell. Well, thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Interesting topic, very interesting. And Andy, is there anything else we need to discuss before we end this?
That is all for the day.
Awesome. Our meeting is adjourned. Russell, thanks again. And thank you, viewer, for watching and sticking around to the very end. We really appreciate you. If you want to help us out, you can hit that like button. We really appreciate it. And share it with a friend or family or your Facebook. That would be your Facebook peeps. That would really help us out. Guys, we love you all, and we hope you have a wonderful week. We'll see you next week.
Good night. We keep waiting.